I'm Robert McCready, and this is the 20th episode of Evening Magic. And with me today, I have Barbara Ross. She's a cozy mystery writer, and I read her Jane Darrofield or Darroway. I always get it confused. She'll clarify. And I finished reading it on a Sunday night, and I called her up and invited her on the show. But today, Barbara Ross, thank you.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for asking me.
I really appreciate you coming on. So, um, I'm a little bit, I don't want to be like all fanned out, but this is going to be like the Rosie O'Donnell show in the 1990s when she would just like gush over every guest. I saw, it was in March, and I think maybe March 20th. It was a Monday, and I was in the Barnes and Noble in Florence, South Carolina, which is right where 95 and I-20 intersect. So if you've driven down to Florida, you've come through here. And one time Stephen King stopped by and was in our Barnes and Noble. But I was looking through the books and I was looking at the cozy mysteries, and I saw is it Jane Darrofield or Jane?
Jane Darrofield, correct.
I saw it and it just made me laugh. It's not snooping if it solves a murder. And it just tickled me. So I totally judged the book by the cover, and I bought both books in the series. So they were hilarious. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you
I,
so much.
are you done with that series?
Well, my publisher is done with that series. It had the fans, the people who liked it a lot, but not a lot of people liked it. So it came out as a Barnes and Noble exclusive right into the teeth of COVID. So having your book on a big book stand in the front of Barnes and Noble, which was the point of the exclusive, didn't really benefit you in any way during that period. So the series was unfortunately short.
It's so good. And we don't know about Jane's son that she's estranged from. If you ever feel like self-publishing some novellas, I recommend it. Sasser Hill, who wrote a couple of series. Are you familiar with her?
Yes, yes.
She's been doing Janet Simpson novellas, and they are a hoot. They're 100 pages. Um, Janet Simpson is probably the same age as Jane, and it just those tickle me also. I like it when I like senior lady characters with some sassiness to them. It's like the Golden Girls.
Yeah, that I love that suggestion for two reasons. One is I've published a lot of novellas six in my main series, the Maine Clambake Mysteries, and I love writing that length. That is my favorite length to write because my short stories are always too long and my novels are always too short. And I feel like the novella length is like my natural length. So I love that length. And Jane did begin her life in short stories, so maybe she will continue from there. If you're curious about her son, there are some answers on, I participate in a group blog of cozy mystery authors called the Wicked Authors blog, and there are some answers on the blog.
Okay, that's good to know. Um, when I first was researching you, I came across a Twitter that belonged to Barbara Ross, and the Twitter looked like it had been banned. And I was wondering if that was you and if you had gotten banned on Twitter.
I it was me, and I don't think I was banned on Twitter. So one of two things happened. I decided to leave Twitter, and you get all kinds of advice about what you should do when you leave Twitter. And it was Twitter when I left, not X, about how you should get rid of all your followers and all this so people don't take over your account. And I was like, I'm just done with this. So I didn't do all those things they tell you to do. Also, I feel like sometimes some of that stuff is like, um, hold a paper bag over your head and scream like a chicken. I mean, it's hard to tell what's real in all those instructions. So I didn't do all that. So either someone took over my Twitter account, as I had been warned someone might, and did something terrible, or Twitter is reluctant to let people know how many people have left, and they're showing my account is suspended as opposed to me having absented myself. But either way, I'm no longer on Twitter, but I swear to you, I did nothing. There was no bad behavior whatsoever.
Okay, I was just curious. I didn't know if you were like posting about the lizard people or something like that.
No, the world of cozy mysteries, honestly, is quite innocent and um quite full of nice people. I hear all these things about, what a horror it is to be on Goodreads or Amazon reviews, but cozy mystery fans are extremely nice and extremely generous. And I have to say, in 13 years of doing this, I have almost never had an interaction that was entirely negative. And even the criticism I feel that have gotten over the years has been from the heart, well meant, well intentioned. So I've had a very good experience in the cozy mystery world, and there have been no lizard people whatsoever.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And but I was curious. I was like, oh, look at Barbara Ross going off on Twitter.
I wish I was that edgy, but alas, I am not.
I was asked by Paula Benson in an earlier interview, and I think it was yesterday or maybe Saturday. She said, what do you like about cozy mysteries? Because I always say that I'm writing a cozy mystery, and I have one written. And I said, well, honestly, I love Charlene Harris. And
Mm.
Charlene Harris, someone described her books as cozies with teeth. And that's the first time I heard the word cozy. So that kind of like Charlene and then back, reverse engineered and thought, oh, I like cozies, but I don't like a lot of cozies. They're hit and miss. And I was like, well, maybe I'm not a cozy mystery author. And then I found your interview, or maybe it was a guest blog post, and you said some of them are good, some of them are not good. I'm not going to mention the not good ones. And that made me feel a little like, okay, so you don't have to love them all to like cozies. Um, your first one, I think I saw an interview somewhere. It didn't go well, or it didn't sell, or something.
So my first one, I don't know if you have a book finished and you're thinking about or in the process of submission, you may not want to hear this story. The first one, which is The Death of an Ambitious Woman, I completed in the mid 90s. It's traditional as opposed to cozy, but really most cozy readers are very comfortable with it. And I got an agent really quickly. As a matter of fact, I got more than one bid from agents, but the agent I chose was unable to sell it. And first of all, I was a very busy job and I had teenage children, and it was kind of like that. But I think I really didn't have the resilience that you need in this profession then. So I kind of just put it in a drawer. And then in 2006, my company was sold and I worked out the transition period. And then I was home and I knew I wanted to be published. And I thought the fastest journey to between 2 points would be to pull out that book. And I pulled it out and I read it. And I was astonished that I had gotten an agent, honestly. It was really terrible. And I like to say that I rototilled it and sent it back out again. And it was published in 2010 by a company called Five Star, which used to publish hardcover mysteries for libraries. They no longer publish original fiction, but their parent company continues to be big in the large print and publishes all my large print books. So that was a long journey. And like I said, maybe not an encouraging one because it took years and years and years, but a lot of those years I wasn't actually submitting.
Um, Well, I guess that leads to my other question. Like, how did you get good at cozies? Is there a template? Do they care about, like, at this chapter, this should happen. At this chapter, this should happen. On this page, this should happen. I know that movies are very, on this page, this has to happen. Are cozy mysteries that way? And how did you learn it?
I think it depends on your publisher, and it also depends on where you are in the journey. So I usually say things like in your first book, when you're trying to prove to an agent or a publisher or an audience, if you self-publish, that you're trustworthy, it's good to follow at least some of the rules. And by rules, I mean have the murder take place quite early, or as we say in the trade, drop the body as soon as you can. Have the sleuth have a reason to get engaged, a very good reason, because so often cozy sleuths are amateur sleuths. And we all know that if we found a body in our dining room, we would call 911 and, hand it over to the authorities as quickly as possible. So you need a very good reason for your sleuth to be engaged. And the quest to find the murderer, or maybe more accurately, the quest to find out what happened, becomes the driver for the sleuth. So that's what's pushing you forward. It's pushing your sleuth forward. It's pushing the narrative forward. It's pushing the reader forward. So I do say follow those kinds of rules. Once your audience trusts you, I have a book where it's not confirmed that the death is a murder until you're like 60% of the way. I have a book where you don't meet the murderer until you never meet the murderer alive. Let me put it that way. So once you've kind of established trust with, and as you know from the second Jane Darrofield book, that also has an unusual solution. So I always say, yes, pay attention. Yes, do the things, have a sleuth, have a victim, have red herrings, have a find justice in the end, at least in the early going. And then you can play around a lot more once your editor trusts you, and much more important, once your audience trusts you, because they'll go along for the ride longer once they know your work. There are other rules that my publisher certainly never looks for. I hear them things like, oh, the victim has to be unlikable. You can't kill someone who's likable. I've always done just the opposite. I've always tried to have the victim, have a reason, an explanation for how that person ended up in that situation. And the same with the killer. I've always tried to give the killer enough, give the reader enough understanding of the killer as to what their motivation might have been in the real world. Because cozies are never like psychos or slashers or serial killers or the CIA. It's always in a closed community. So I've never done that. I've never had it be like a trivial motive. I just don't believe in revenge killings, and I don't believe you should kill someone because they cut in front of you in the line at the post office. So some rules, but I have to say my editor has never tried to enforce that level of rules on me ever.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Um, I did notice in the second Jane book how obsessed she got with trying to figure things out. And she would just call up someplace and ask a question, and that would be the investigation. It'd be a whole scene. I think you were doing, for a large part of the book, one chapter, one scene, which I enjoyed because you get to turn a lot of pages. Um, so I appreciated that. And then I like how she kept on, like, the other mysteries in the heroine's life, like about her son, or should she let her boyfriend move in a little bit more than he already was. And and they never did it on the page, or even it was not even that implied off the page. It was just he wanted a drawer, and so we knew he was staying over, and I appreciated that. I think it's kind of funny when you are dancing around something. It's kind of it's delighting in a way. Sasser Hill wrote in the first Janet Simpson novella. She looked at her friend coming down the hallway in the hotel, and her hair was disheveled, and her clothes was disheveled, and I was like, "Oh, I know what was happening."
Right, 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 right.
And so I think it's kind of fun to do, and mine isn't published, so I won't say what I did to imply, because I don't want someone watching this to take the idea, because ideas are not copyrighted.
Right, cannot be
So I'm not gonna
repeated.
do that. But I get a little delight in that. But then what happened to me? I wrote a female protagonist, and then a friend of mine, I went to MFA school, and a friend of mine said, "What are you doing writing women? You should be writing men." And then I thought, well, maybe I should make it a man. And then I was changing the gender, and then I just thought about the book too much, and it froze me.
Yeah, you can yeah, I mean, I think you have to do what comes inside. I always ask myself, what standing do I have to tell this story? Like, who am I in relation to these characters in this story? But once I find that, then I'm sort of comfortable going ahead. But I liked, my Maine Clambake Mysteries are first person, Jane Darrofield's third person. Maine Clambake series is typically average 3 scenes to a chapter. As you said, Jane Darrofield has kind of a 1-to-1 type of a ratio and movement. So I do like to kind of play around. But I mean, I have other male friends who write female protagonists, who write cozies, who are published authors. I think it's fine, and I think it as long as you find the character, as long as you can find the character.
All right, that's cool. How long does it take you to write a book?
So for the past maybe, I guess, 4 5 years, 4 years, I've been writing one book and one novella per year. So across 12 months, I write 100-page novella and I write one 250-page novel. And that's kind of been a comfortable pace for me. I'm a bit of a procrastinator, so I like to have a little bit of pressure, but I also want to have my life. So I know lots of cozy writers are much more prolific, but that's been a nice pace for me.
So do you have a word quota or a page quota per day?
When I'm in a first draft mode, I have a quota of between 1,000 and 1,200 words per day. Usually, because of the whole procrastination thing, I'm up at the 1,200 words per day. And when I'm revising, I have a quota of 20 pages a day. And usually that evens out in the sense that you can spend 2 days on 5 pages on a 5-page scene, but then you'll find 3 scenes that just need proofreading and tightening. And so usually in the averages, I can accomplish that. Not all the time. If the first draft's a horrible mess, I can't, but that's my goal.
Um, are all of your books 70,000 words? I think I saw in an interview you said when you're writing 70,000 words.
I mean, most cozy mysteries are between 65,000 and maybe 80,000 words. I struggle to get over the line of 60, which my publisher insists on, because of the whole thing I told you before, that my novels are always too short and my short stories are always too long.
The Oh, speaking of short stories, I have a very short story on Hobart today, and I'm on the front page. I'm very happy, thanks to Hobart people. And I remember I saw an interview where you said short stories are about control and novels are about faith.
Yes, well, that's not me. That's I'm quoting
Juno
Junot
Diaz.
Diaz.
Yeah.
And but the way he tells it is really funny. I mean, short stories are about control. You can keep a whole short story in your head, which is why when I was really busy with my career, that's what I was writing, because I could sit at a red light and run through the whole story. But novels are a leap of faith, because when you're writing the back third, you have to have faith that it has something to do with what you've written in the beginning,
Mhm.
which was months ago, right? And which you've sort of barely recalling. So I've always found that to be very true in my experience.
What's your favorite genre to read?
I write mysteries because my favorite genre to read is mysteries, but I do tend more in the traditional. So but I love series. And of course, as we know, cozies are usually series. So I love Kate Atkinson. I love Deborah Crumpy. I loved P.D. James and Ruth Rendell. I love kind of those, or Julie Spencer Fleming, those Louise Penny, those sort of traditional um, mysteries is my absolute favorite thing to read. That being said, I've just read all of Mick Herron's Slough House mysteries, which are espionage stories, and absolutely loved them. So within the crime genre, I'm pretty wide, and I will read outside that genre as well. I think readers are not as narrow as I think publishers target readers, thinking that readers read in this narrow band. But when I actually meet readers, I've never met anyone who said, I only read this.
Right, and I haven't either. And I know as a writer, I write different than I want to write sometimes, and I read different than I am writing. So, as I, get into a professional setting, I think that I think the only genre I would be scared of writing is a thriller. Those seem really hard, although, there's a lot of success for them.
Yeah, to me, thriller, the words kind of mystery, thriller, suspense, there's the marketing terms, and then there's the actual structure of the book. And they're two different things. I always tell people, if they call it a thriller, it's because they think men will read it. And if they call it women's fiction, it's because they think book clubs will read it. But it has nothing to do with the actual structure of the book. So it's important as a writer not to get gummed up in the marketing terms for it. For me, I don't, we have to make a decision about your life and how much time you want to spend in very dark places. And for me to come to my desk every day and contemplate putting myself in a place that's very, very dark isn't appealing. It's not how I want to spend my time, which is why I'm happy to be in the traditional mystery cozy world where justice prevails and the world rights itself at the end of the story.
And everybody's kind of happy and dealing with other dramas in life until the body shows up. And then it's a little bit of that, and then dealing with the other dramas in life until another body shows up. I was reading I think her name is pronounced Jana De Leon. She writes the alligator mysteries in Louisiana. Have you heard of those?
No, I haven't.
I think her name is Jana De Leon. And
Okay.
one of the members of Sisters in Crime in Colombia, the Palmetto chapter, he recommended the book to me. And so I got it, and it was really good. The woman got an inheritance and moved to Louisiana, and she used to be some kind of like superstar. Like I think she had big boobs and like bleached hair. Like she looked out of place in the town. And the first thing that happened was that there was a battle over which church she was going to go to. Was she going to go to the Baptists or the Catholics? And this was important because she was younger than everyone else in town, and they needed her speed to get to the restaurant when church let out so they could get the table that they wanted.
That's pretty funny.
Right. I mean, it was great. And I don't even really remember the mystery, but the journey of it was just cool. And Charlene Harris's books are like that too. You kind of forget the mystery. I don't know any of the mysteries of Sookie Stackhouse, but there's always a mystery in them. I just remember, like the sex scene in Living Dead in Dallas. Did you read the Sookie Stackhouse series?
No, I watched the show and I've read some of them, but not all of them.
Well, it's completely different cosmology.
Then
And
the show?
yes,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, Lafayette dies in the second book. He's the body at the beginning, and he continues in the show for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and Elvis makes an appearance in the books. And that's funny. And I like, as a Southerner, Charlene and I have a lot in common. Like there's a moment in the book when Sookie falls asleep before she even finishes saying her prayers. And that is something that a lot of Southerners, and maybe everyone else can too, but like church is a big thing here. Even Charleston, South Carolina is called the Holy City because of all the steeples around the town. So I appreciate those things. And there were lots of things, phrasing that she said that we say here that I appreciated. What um, cozy series would you recommend me or anyone listening read besides your own, besides the Clambake Mysteries?
Let me think about this. So I really had sort of when you were saying, should I write cozies? Am I a cozy author? And you found some that you really resonate with and some that you don't. When I was offered the first contract, I was in the same place. And I was like, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? And I read the Coffee House Mysteries by Cleo Coyle, and I loved them. They're a little different in the sense that they take place in Greenwich Village, so it's not a small town, but it's still a small community. It's a community of people gathered around, both who work at and who go regularly to this coffee shop. And that one really helped me get my bearings. I love the Garden Squad Mysteries by Julia Henry. There are 5 of those, and they take place each one takes place in a different season. And because they're gardening related, the season makes a huge difference. So I really like those. I really like Catherine Hall Page. So, those would be in terms of my influences. Maddie Day, who writes the Country Store Mysteries and also the Murder on Cape Cod Mysteries, Cape Cod Book Group Mysteries, I guess that is another one. And then I like the historicals as well. So I think there's something for everyone. And like we started this conversation, some of them are just not going to be for you. But I'm always like, there's a lot of terrible literary fiction too.
Mhm.
There's a lot of amazing, brilliant, genius literary fiction, but there's a lot of truly awful literary fiction. I mean, in every genre, you're going to find there's hits and misses. And your personal taste matters so much. I mean, that's the one thing I've learned as a writer is it's all a matter of people's personal taste. And as a friend of mine's daughter says, you can offer someone the ripest, juiciest, most gorgeous peach, but if they don't like peaches, they're not going to like it. So, you know.
You're exactly right. I remember when All the Light We Cannot See, I think that was the name of the book, won the Pulitzer Prize. I heard people say, well, the main character wasn't complicated enough. She was perfect. And then when the Goldfinch won the Pulitzer Prize, I heard people say it was too long. I know several editors that said it should have been shorter. So um, there's always going to be that kind of naysayer there. How many books have you sold?
So I've published, there are going to be 12 in the Maine Clambake Mysteries when the one comes out this April. and then 6 novella series. I write the novellas with Leslie Meyer and Lee Hollis, and they're all themed around holidays, but they include the Maine Clambake characters. And then the 2 Jane Darrofields and The Death of an Ambitious Woman. So what's that? 12, 14, 15 novels and 6 novellas.
Okay, how many have you sold? Do you know, like a ballpark figure?
Sold. Sorry. It's almost, well, counting ebooks and print books, about 300,000.
Oh, good for
So
you.
decent. So that doesn't include audiobooks or large print. So decent for mid-list. Not bestseller, but chugging along on the mid-list.
So you can have a career and support yourself and get to be a writer every day. That's really cool. I think that's my goal. I don't want to be Stephen King or Dean Koontz. I just, I saw a tweet a couple of weeks ago from Miss Unity, and he said, I want to be famous enough to make $5,000 a year hosting flash fiction workshops.
Hey, everyone has an ambition. The stumbling blocks to all of this, as ever, are healthcare and toner. I always say toner is the second highest expense after healthcare.
Oh, definitely. I have one of those cheap brother printers that only does black and white just to like save money rather than one that it does the colors and mixes its own black and stuff. I've been thinking about getting a free write. Have you heard of those?
No.
They're electronic typewriters, and they had the first one that looked like a big fancy old-timey like Underwood typewriter, and then they came up with the Traveler, Free Write Traveler, and it folds up and it has an LED screen. And now they have the Free Write Alpha, which has a smaller screen but no lag between the keys and the words showing up on the LED screen. So they reflect light rather than emit light. That's part of their appeal, and it has no distraction like social media.
Interesting.
So yeah, and it will upload to wherever you want to upload it to, like in the cloud or something like that.
Hmm.
Do you just type on the computer?
I do. I use Scrivener. Do you?
I don't use Scrivener.
Yeah, I use Scrivener. I don't think I could have done 15 books in the last 13 years without it, honestly.
Oh, cool. Well, we're getting close to the end of the interview. And at the end of the interview, I always take a lesson from the Paul Leslie Hour. The Paul Leslie Hour was a radio show in Atlanta, and then it moved to Charleston. I might be getting the history of the show wrong, but anyway, now it is a podcast. It's been going on for 20 years, and Paul Leslie, the host, always gives the show over to his guest at the end of the show. He gives them the show and he lets them say whatever is on her mind, knowing that what she says could potentially reach people 200 years from now. So, Barbara, with that being said, the show is yours. What do you have to say?
Well, I'm going to say 2 things that are not the least profound. One is I wanted to tell you that I don't know if you've ever met Charlene Harris, but she is like one of the nicest people in the world, despite all the terrible things she does to people in her books. And that she started out, writing real cozies, really traditional cozies before she hit it big with the Suki Stackhouse books. So she's always kind of been very inspiring to me because she hung in there through being on the mid list for years and years before she hit it big. And the other thing I was going to react to one of the things about church in the South. Maine, where my Maine Clambake Mysteries are set, always comes in national surveys as the least religious state in the Union. So I often kind of I have written blog posts and about the differing churches and religions in my little town and the differing politics of my various characters, because they're definitely all there. But that's sort of just the opposite. I'm in exactly the opposite situation. And as a matter of fact, I remember being in a conversation with somebody and they kept talking about VBC or VOB. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, Vacation Bible Camp. Like everyone knows this. And I had no idea what they were talking about. So I'm living at the other end of the Appalachians, and it's just really different here.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Barbara.
Thank you so much for having me.